Hi, everyone, and welcome to Serverless Office Hours, Halloween-themed Serverless Office Hours. Excited to be with you for this flagship show when it comes to all things serverless. My name is Gunnar Grosch, developer advocate based in Sweden, and I'm back. I was here last week as well, and hopefully some of you are returning viewers despite that fact. And this time, I'm excited to have two guests with me. Both Joe and Siva are joining. Welcome to the show, fellas.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
So let's maybe start with a short round of introductions. Joe, you want to go first?
Yeah, hi everyone. My name is Joe Eliotto. I am a specialist solutions architect that focuses on cloud operations. So I cover a few different areas. I cover observability and monitoring, governance and compliance, and centralized operations management. And I've been with AWS for about 3-ish years, a little over that. And I love serverless and I love observability, among other things. And I actually cover North America and mostly ISV customers, our partners, but I actually cover all segments right now. And I'm joined by my buddy Siva here, which go ahead and introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be here. My name is Siva Gruvaredia, a senior specialist architect focusing on observability. I'm part of the worldwide specialist team. So predominantly I work with all the customers throughout the world, wherever they're having some observability needs. And that's what we're going to be talking about today.
Yeah, no, exciting to have you both. Welcome to the show and welcome everyone watching as well. We have Daryl, we have Daniel, Eerie Edits, and Takusu, I believe it is, and many, many more joining us as well. So welcome everyone. And as always, we want to make this interactive. So when you have questions, put them in the chat. And don't worry if we don't get to your questions straight away. We'll get to them eventually throughout the show. And yeah, like both Joe and Siva said, observability is the name of this week's show. And we're going to focus, of course, on serverless observability. Yay. So we're going to look at some of the things that are new around observability, of course, and we're going to dive in. And once again, if you have questions, do keep them coming. So, Joe, you want to kick us off and tell us a bit about what we're going to talk about?
Yeah, so today we're going to dive into quite a few areas. There's some new things. Not all of them are directly related to serverless, but they enhance the observability experience for serverless. Start kicking off. What we'll look at, and I'm going to do a little overview of what we're talking about today, is we're going to go into application signals, which that's our application performance monitoring feature within CloudWatch. And we're going to look at services and some new just like single click experience where you click on your service, you get an overview of that, and it gives you some insights without having to dive deeper. If you're having an issue with your service, it might just present to you the issue showing some metrics. Really cool. Additionally, something that's been really hot. You may remember if you used CloudWatch previously, we used to have service map within application signals. Well, that's been replaced by application map. Service map was kind of a spider web of connecting services. Now we have a really crisp, clean view for the boxes and dependencies on how services flow and getting some quick insights. It's really powerful. It's really nice bird's eye view into what's going on with your services. We've had some metric updates, which we'll dive deeper when we get there, but there's some really impactful things that can change the way you not just query your metrics, but also how you create dashboards and alarms that are going to be really impactful. Moving on to there, EventBridge got management events that you can put to different destinations. We got the management events so we can see what's going on. And also being able to send those to CloudWatch, S3, or Data Firehose, right? Data Firehose can go to a ton of different destinations. Lambda got that as well as tiered pricing alongside with that, and we'll dive into that. And then there's some cool step function stuff released. Distributed map metrics to be able to manage those distributed map, kind of hey, are we getting throttled? Like, what's going on? Are they not able to run? We can get the performance into it based on some very simple metrics, which makes it really easy. And also something else that step functions got was around service quota management. They got service quota APIs. It isn't specifically observability, but when you're getting throttled because your service quotas aren't high enough and you need to increase those, you can now get events that you can actually create a state machine to increase those for. And so we're going to go into what that looks like and kind of take a look at how you could potentially do that. But to kind of get us going, let's just jump into application signals. And what I'm going to do is once we get in there, I'm going to hand it over to Siva. Siva's like the application signals expert. So I'm going to have him kind of walk through what we have in the console, what application signals is, and we'll go through some services and take a look at what we have for functionality today.
Yeah, sounds like we have about 2 weeks of content to cover in 55 minutes. So
yeah.
I guess let's jump into it straight away. All right, so what do we see right now? It's the common CloudWatch console to begin with, but where exactly are we in it?
Yeah, go ahead, Siva.
Yeah, thanks, Joe, for that awesome introduction. Yeah, as Joe mentioned, we are going to be talking about observability, we are going to be talking about serverless, and then everything in between, right? So starting with the application signals, what is application signals? So this is an APM, or application performance monitoring feature that we launched last year. So with this one, if you are having your applications, maybe you wanted to monitor it and then have some proactive actions to be taken, including SLIs, SLOs creation, etc., etc., this is a place to go. So what Joe is showing here is the way, when you're coming into the first time, you enable application signals, and then you start monitoring some of the services. This is how your out-of-the-box dashboard is going to look like. As you could see here, he is we are running some 32 services, or at least we are monitoring some 32 services. And at the one particular point of place, you can say how your applications are running, be it one account or multiple accounts. We do have everything covered. So in the top left, you are having your SLIs, which is your service level indicators, which shows which services are healthy, unhealthy, etc. And then the next couple of widgets, you are going to be showing hey, how many of my services are failing? Because as a service operator, you wanted to know how many of your services are failing, and is there any dependencies that might be failing as well, right? For example, I might be running some payment gateway application, which I'm relying on a third party, and I wanted to know where exactly it is failing. It could be a dependency, but if it is stopped working, it's going to be stopping my business. So I better wanted to take care of that one. And then on just if you go a little down, if he's having all the services in one place, be it cross account, wherever the services are running, and at a single particular place, I will be able to see how healthy it is, what is my availability, where it is running, and which account it is running, etc., right? All these things are coming from one particular place. And from here, you can create SLOs. If you wanted to have any kind of proactive monitoring, you can do that as well. And then if you wanted to drill down into the details, just click on it, and that's pretty much it. You can get into the weeds from 10,000 foot level to all the way to the ground level details.
Yeah.
I guess the common question when we see this, though, is how much is needed to actually get to this point? Because this obviously isn't something you set up just now. It's something that you've set up ahead of time. Because I think a common thing we hear around serverless is that there is a bunch of stuff that you need to configure to be able to actually observe what is happening with it in your application. And many use power tools for AWS Lambda, for instance, to make it easier to instrument your Lambda functions. But how do you get to this point?
Great question, Gunnar. So the thing is, we are supporting predominantly all the compute platforms within AWS, EC2, EKS, ECS, even some Kubernetes workloads running on-prem, right? And not to forget Lambda as well. So if you want to create it, just click on this enable application signals button here. Joe, if you can click on it.
Yep.
Yes. So from here, it's as simple as choose your platform, choose your cluster, and then just go ahead and then see if you want to do it from the console, you can do that. Otherwise, if you wanted to integrate that with your CI/CD pipeline, we will be giving a snippet of code, and just take it and then put it in your deployment file or whatever it is. And that's it. You are good to go with this onboarding into application signals.
Cool.
So kind of to touch on that again, so specifically for Lambda, since we're talking about serverless, and Lambda's the compute, serverless compute platform. No hate on ECS, but Lambda has a place in my heart. So for Lambda functions specifically, what it does is when you enable it, and we're going to go and look at this Lambda from the console, which not everyone deploys from the console. From the console, under the monitoring and operations, there are the monitoring tools. And if you wanted to, and you had a function and you wanted to play with this, you can literally just click the checkbox for application signals. Mm-hmm. That's it. You just click the checkbox. You go ahead and save those settings, right? I would suggest to have the traces being sent as well. But what does that do? What does that checkbox do? That's kind of the question, because that's just like black box magic, right? So what it does is it loads the for OpenTelemetry Lambda layer, and then it is going to set up the Lambda exec wrapper to instrument your application so that it launches with OTel instrument. And so your application, you don't have to change anything in your application. You just give it the a dot layer, you tell it to execute to instrument your layer, which it defines this by default, and then it'll start showing up in application signals.
And also the good news is these are all based on open standards. We are using OpenTelemetry, like Joe is talking about. Yep. So if you are onboarding to this, so you don't have to worry about like, hey, am I into some vendor lock or right? Like, tomorrow, these are all open standards. If you wanted to get out of here, like, you don't have to make any kind of code changes. And also another good news is, since we are talking about OpenTelemetry, and if you are aware of it, like, OpenTelemetry is providing something called auto instrumentation, meaning like if you might be running like some lambdas, which you have written in Java lang maybe for the last 15 years, it's running in your environment, and you don't want to mess up the code just for the sake of observability. So in this case, since we are using OpenTelemetry with auto instrumentation feature, you don't have to do a lot of things. Just enable it, and that's pretty much it. You are already onboarded. So that's a good news that you're getting it.
Yeah,
that's very cool. And I know there's a feature that we've talked about before when it comes to Lambda versions. So can you show us how that's supported within this as well?
Yeah, actually, I have a great scenario for that. Surprise. So what we have is we have an ordering service, right? This was our production ordering service that's part of our retail application that's running. So customers place orders with that. And for some reason, it was 100%, but we're seeing that it's now down to 98.8% service availability. And we're not sure why. So diving a bit deeper into what's going on with that, with this Lambda, the service that's run on Lambda. We'll give this a second to load. Okay, and so I guess, Siva, do you want to tell us a little bit about what we're seeing here and what all of these boxes are, and then we'll kind of go through it some more.
Sure, Joe. So like Joe is showing here, like, just on a high level, again, on a 10,000 foot overview, you have to have like, you wanted to know all the stats. In this case, the ordering service, how many APIs you are running, in this case, just 2, because we are just talking about Lambda, which is a handler. And then you have like, 5 dependencies. And then if you have any canaries and then real user monitoring pages, everything is available from one place. And also, so the second set of boxes that you're seeing here that we just launched recently, so we will be able to show you like, how many number of red signals you are getting, like request, errors, and then duration or latency. So in this case, like, not only it's going to be showing you all the stats around it, but even if it is comparing with the previous time frame. In this case, we are talking about 3-hour window. So compared to the previous time 3-hour window, like, how much more or less it is. So in this case, like, in terms of request, it's more than like 1,621%, because we might be running some traffic generator to get this one, right? So it's easy from here to figure out like, how your APIs are running. And then you can take some educated guess, like, how we are going. And not only that, like, today it's all about artificial intelligence and all those things. And we want to give you some proactive monitoring from here. So we are giving you like, some operational audit. And then these are all saying that like, these are some of the things that you need to take some action, even though like, nothing is failing. So we wanted to give you like, some amount of proactive details. So not only from our dependencies side, if you go all the way, even from service code also, like, it's going to show you, like, you need to do anything here. Like, in this case, the service code audit, it typically does it. And it will say like, do you need to do anything from here? And also on another layer is changes. That's what Gunnar was talking about. We might be somebody might have deployed something, and then because of that, it could be failing. So in this case, we haven't deployed anything recently in the last 3 hour window. But if you did that, you are going to show all those details from one place, right? So that's how you'll be able to do it. And then Joe is going to be showing us how he's going to be seeing the finer level details, why that fault is happening, how we are going to fix it, and all those, right?
Yeah. So like for this example, there was that faults and it showed 32 faults. I wanted to jump to the faults and see where the faults were occurring. So that took us to our service operation. This is the actual compute layer itself. So what you'll see is we have the function handler and the Lambda service. So the Lambda service aspect of it isn't throwing faults, but what's inside the function handler is. What's actually very interesting about this is, so within the function handler, we're getting faults. But if I look at the dependencies of what's going on itself, which resides with the handler, there's no faults within the actual calls we're making. So this immediately tells you there's something wrong with the actual what's in the function handler, but it's not with the downstream calls you're doing as your dependencies. There's some other error specific to your code. So let's jump in here. We're going to take a quick look. So we're at the function handler. It shows a 1%, 1.3% failure. What's going on there? Let me select that. It's going to request an availability latency and error section. And when this updates, what I can do is I can go to any one of these points and click on it. What that's going to do is that's going to give me the correlated traces that we can look at to try to determine what's wrong. It gives us different response time information. We can see the correlated spans related to that. It's related to the traces. But this is the one thing you were asking about, Gunnar.
Yeah.
The top contributors for Lambda function. So we have an alias defined for production. And we can see we had 13 requests. We had 3 faults. Okay, that's interesting. But if I look at versions for this time, what I find is my version 1, which was our production version we were running, has 0 faults. But this new version that we're running, that we have split, that we're testing out, right? We didn't do a full deployment. We just configured the alias to use multiple different Lambda versions so that we could test how well it's working in production. That one is having 3 faults. And so it's oh, okay. So it looks like the new one that we were trying to roll out had some issues. But let's take a quick look. So we'll give this a second to load. And as this is loading, now we get our trace map. Oh, this is a synthetics run. And so that's a different topic. But this is where we're making a connection to our API gateway stage, right? Our API gateway, we're connecting to our Lambda through the context, the function, and our actual ordering service, which is within there. And then we can see these different faults. Something that's interesting is even with the error we have, we're not throwing a stack trace, an exception we can view, even though technically we should. Something's definitely wrong with our function code though, because we saw that. But we can start to inspect these and start to view, some details around this specific span. Look at the details here. This isn't necessarily new. This is a way we could do this. But without doing too much deep inspection, what I can tell you, just so that we can make sure we get to the other content, if you go and inspect the version 12 of the Lambda function, you will find that there's an error in the code that someone implemented as a part of test. And then you could clean that up and then fix it as part of 13 and do the rollback. But this made it really easy to be able to see that it's a specific alias that you're presenting that's throwing the errors, and the other one was not. And so that's just a really nice way to get some visibility into that.
Oh, for sure. No, this must be great when, say, you're doing blue, green, or canary deployments and need to actually dive into what's happening with one of those specific versions. It's super cool.
Yeah,
and also maybe
absolutely.
Just to put on that point, we recently launched what Joe was talking about, application map. Maybe Joe, you can show that run, right? So previously
yes, that's
called a service map, wherein you will be having the details around, hey, how many services are doing and all those, right? So oftentimes customers are running hundreds of services. So when it's coming to the services, it's all cluttered. It's hard to make sense of what is talking what, right? So we listened to that feedback, and then just 2 weeks back we launched this feature called application map. So with this feature, it's pretty easy. You can easily group it. Even if you're running your prod workloads, your dev workloads, and then staging workloads, anything for that matter, you can group and then filter with all this information, right? In the environment, you can mention, hey, this is my prod application, or I can say this is my front end application versus my back end application. So there is a proper segregation of concern is there. And if you want to dive deep into the details, like here, what Joe was showing here, so this donut chart is going to show you how easy it is for us to go ahead and then take a look into our services. If there is something going wrong, just click on it, or just click on the view insights, and then from there you will be able to see your red metrics. And also the way we are seeing here, it's going to be showing you how my different services are talking to each other, and each and everything is showing my insights information, including my health, including my operational audit, and including my red metrics. So this is a great feature. We just launched it recently, which our customers are loving it. And this way we can easily see I can visualize my things, how my services are handling. And also at the same time, if I need to take any action items, everything is shown in red if there is an action item needed, so that I can easily go there, click on this, and then even use my CloudWatch investigations to come up all the GenAI agents and then do the job.
Comment from a friend of the show, Leandro. It's really exciting to see OpenTelemetry support growing significantly on AWS across services. Plus one to that for sure.
And
absolutely.
We are going beyond X-Ray. X-Ray, as you know, it's our proprietary way of doing tracing. We are going towards OpenTelemetry. So you will be able to see a lot of support. We are going towards that route.
That's very cool. All right.
Yeah,
so that was application map.
Yeah. So SLOs, do you want to talk a little bit more about SLOs, Siva?
Yep. Yeah, SLOs, that's a feature that you can set it. Like I mentioned, customers typically, how they used to do it is they create a lot of alarms in place. But end of the day, why you are creating alarms? You want to match up with your business metrics, right? With SLOs, you can do the job. You can just go and say hey, my availability should be 99% of the time. That's pretty much it. And you as a customer doesn't need to worry about how it is being done on all those things. And that's the way, that's the power of this SLI creation. Like what Joe is showing here, you can just go there, set the condition, the availability or latency. And then in the right-hand side, you will be able to see, in the last 3-hour window, how it is behaving, so that you can get a reference of how this particular metric is performing, right? So once you create an SLI, just create an SLO. It could be a one-day rolling window or a 30-day rolling window. Just set it on how much it has to be active, 99.9% of the time. And that one, indirectly, you are creating your error budget. So once you've created it, you can set some burn rates, because if there is some exponential things are coming up, you want to be notified. So you can create all those things, and that's pretty much it. You can create some warnings, we have a SNS integration available. So from here, you can maybe send an email or send a Slack message or a PagerDuty or whatever, right? So this way, you don't have to wait till your SLO gets breached. You can create some warning threshold. So at 30% mark, if you want to get warned, this is going to be triggering an alarm for you, so that you can take some action even before your customer does.
Mm-hmm. And I think the nice thing is you can also set the exclusion. So if you have to do some sort of maintenance or take it offline for some reason, you're not going to get an alarm, because we all have alarm fatigue when it comes down to it with all of the alarms that happen. So it's a nice feature that was introduced more recently as well. Okay, well, I think we should move on to some other things that came out new. So metrics, and I'm actually going to zoom out a little bit so we can get this window, because my screen's very big. Let me jump to metrics. But we introduced something new with metrics, a few things that are new with metrics. Actually, before I do that, I forgot to do this. I have 2 links that we can share that are related to how we at AWS use SLOs for some of our applications. It's a part 1 and part 2 series. This goes really deep into how we can use it. So we'll share those links with you so that you can review that after the stream. But coming back to where we were in metrics, we released a few new things with metrics. One being you can now enable resource tags on your metrics, which is really, really powerful. And we have these two things. So we have, we can monitor the metrics individually. So that's where we can use group by or order by. So think of like all of your Lambda functions. You want to monitor all your Lambda functions. Before, you had to go and monitor each individual metric one at a time, right? And you'd have to have an alarm for each of those. Now you can just say, concurrent executions, and you could do a sum if you need to, right, to get it. And you could do it for all of your Lambda functions and have it see each one individually. We'll look at that in a minute. Additionally, we also added where you can have those tags, and you can enable tags so that, think of it this way. Now you could say, I want all of my production Lambda functions and be able to manage that, or have that in a dashboard, or have one alarm that manages all of your Lambda functions that are for production, or even a bit more detailed, which we'll look at in a minute, I promise. And then additionally, there's this other thing. Oh, wait. There's another thing we released around, we used to only provide up to 3 hours worth of metrics, like metric history, and we've increased that to 2 weeks. So that's a significant amount of time to go back and historically review your metrics if maybe you had an incident or some issue you needed to investigate, and that those would now be available as a part of your metric queries. So what I want to do is I kind of want to show you these in use. I have this dashboard, which I'm going to bring up here. We'll see it in just a second. And what this is this is my Lambda dashboard. And what I've at my product, and this will come up, and once it's here, we'll be able to look at everything our production Lambda functions are doing, but we need the same type of metrics for our development Lambda functions. And we know they're just tagged differently, so we can use those tags now. As this loads, I'm going to zoom out just a little bit.
While we're
but what you can
see to load, we have a question from Daryl in the chat.
Yeah.
The 3 hours to 2 weeks change. Does that apply to container insights on EKS as well?
It's metrics across the board. So yeah, it should be.
That was a very straight answer.
Yeah. So that should be it. But as you can hear, so I have a couple of things, a couple of fancy things maybe. So I have where I'm monitoring my entire fleet of prod Lambda functions, where this is just showing prod by that tag. And I just want to see how's production doing as a whole. Additionally, right below that, I have all of my Lambda functions that are for prod, but I'm looking at all of those individually. And the cool thing that I'm doing here, and I'll show you, I also have a label that's showing not just the name of it, but it's showing the entire sum of what that usage is across that period. So we can see what it is individually at one specific point, but we can also see what the total is, which is kind of cool. But we can start. We have and dead letter errors, but we can see it from the actual like tag view, and we can see it by it's reeling, and we can see it by the specific resource view. This is if I wanted to look at dev, I can use a dashboard variable. My connection is today. We're coming back. I'm back. But we can switch it to dev, and what it's going to do is it's going to refresh all of those queries for all of them using the variable look at that resource. So now that it's doing that, I can see all my development queries. But the thing that's really handy, and let's jump in and actually look at one of the queries here. Whoop, getting in there. So let's go edit. Okay, so I have a couple of things going on. First, the label. This is a way that I can use like the label to just show what the name of that resource is, and then I'm summing up the actual total of all of the points across that metric. Just makes it kind of like a nice way to see what the total is there. But then we have, and I'm going to zoom in because I know this is really small. Let's get in there. And so what I have is, oh, that's too big. We're going back. Sorry, this is being touchy. There we go. Let's try that. Okay. So what we have is I'm looking at all my invocations, right? I'm seeing them from Lambda. That's the dimension that we're working from. This is the variable I'm using in the dashboard, right? This is either like I had in the dropdown prod or dev for this specific tag. And then I'm grouping it by function name. So I'm seeing each individual function, right? If I were to group by the same tag environment, I would just see prod. This is going to show me all of the individual functions that are for prod or for dev. One of the additional things is if you have multiple tags like we do, and you might have a tag for environment, for service, for whatever how you break it down, it's SQL, right? It's a SQL query. So you could be like where tag equals that and, tag dot service name, or like just random example, right? Service name equals something as well, right? So you could start to define it to be much more defined than just that one individual simple statement. And you can have very specific queries that are going to update as those functions are added and tagged. So if you're decommissioning and commissioning new functions, old functions, taking them out, you don't ever have to update this table, this graph, this dashboard, or your alarms. It's just going to pick it up because it's tagged that way. So you have these dynamic dashboards or alarms or metric queries that you can use. And if you're kind of following cloud best practices and you are using more ephemeral type environments and you are spinning up new resources, whether it's Lambda or any other type of resource, you don't worry about deploying an alarm each time. You can have one that, kind of catches all that. Mm-hmm. But considerations there. If you have something that's catch alarm, that alarm might be firing all the time, right? It might be going off because now you've kind of consolidated it. But the notification you get is going to tell you what specific resource is impacted and causing it to fire. So you're able to dive deeper or create automation off of that, but you can have less alerts to manage.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
And also, Joe, you want to talk about the query generator, which is a natural language way of generating queries.
Yes. I'm actually gonna go into metrics, and we will take a brief look at that because I wanted to show you the query generator alongside of what else is available. I'm gonna scale out just because I need a little bit more screen space, but I'll zoom back in. Let's go to it. So Lambda. All right, and I'm going to go by function name. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do to show this once this loads, I'm going to grab SQL, and I'm going to show the query generator in a second, but the filter by. So if you were in here and you've selected your dimension and you wanted to filter by your tags, now you'll notice your tags show up that are on any of those metrics. So if you didn't want to write the SQL, but you wanted an easy way to get it, you can just go ahead and do it this way and be like, oh, I want my environment. And it can equal, and then it's going to look at what you have. And you can be like, I want it to be my prod environment. Now I have this. Great. That's cool. But maybe I want it to help me go a little further. And that's where we can use the query generator, right? We can add it. We can say, do I want it to generate a new query, or do I want to say, add where tag env, or tag service name equals retail, like that. And you can choose refine existing query. I didn't test this. We'll see how it goes. I'm hopeful. Yes. And so let's see how it updates it. And so it did tag service name equals retail service. So we just updated it that way. And if you're working from scratch with SQL, you can also say, I want this metric, do it by like an average of this for these specific things, and it can generate the query for you. It's really handy.
That's super cool.
All right. That's like metrics.
Oh, that's very cool. So if you just joined us, this is the Serverless Office Hours. I'm Gunnar, and I'm joined today by Joe and Siva, and we're talking all things observability tied to serverless, of course. So if you have questions, put them in the chat. We've gotten some good questions so far. I want to put Joe and Siva on the spot, though, so I have to make those questions a bit harder. No, jokes aside. All right, so what next? You had a long list of news for us to cover, Joe.
I do. Let's move on to EventBridge. So we'll talk about EventBridge and Lambda, but what is EventBridge added for observability recently. So they've added event bus logging, like specifically for like some of the events that come in and what those behaviors are. And so if you go to event bus, I just have my default event bus here. If I come in here and actually if I click on this, updated, you can now log records for an event bus to CloudWatch logs, Firehose streams, or S3 buckets. Send it wherever you like. You're going to notice that that's starting to be common across a lot of services, giving customers the choice of where they want to put them. And so here, now on the event bus, we have logs. And so you can set up for what you want your log. If you want info or errors and only log those error events, right? You can choose to include log execution data. So like how it's trying to invoke the rules, what's happening there. You can choose where you're sending your error or your info. So if you have if you want your errors logs to go in a specific log group or destination, you can do that. And you can have your info go in another. If you want to separate those, you can choose to do that. But once you do that, let's just kind of take a look at what those look like. And then we'll start to kind of parse some of those to see if, hey, maybe we were having some issues and we want to track it down, because that's why we want those events. We want to be able to see when there are behaviors that are unexpected and be able to track those down quickly. And so I have, this is where I created my delivery stream initially. Don't worry about that. We're going into the actual stream itself, the log stream. Within here, what we have is we have just some details, right? What type of message is it? It's a rule match. It's an info log level. It gives me the rule that's running, right? And the target and any invocation IDs. There's not much to do with this. I don't know that you necessarily need info logs that you're going to take action on, but errors are really where it starts to get, really interesting. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to jump out of here and we're going to go to log insights. So I'm going to start actually looking at these logs and start to parse these logs. Okay. Now that we're in here, let's choose whoops, that's a typo, event. See, event bus. So this is the log group I was in. I'm going to collapse this. We don't need this here anymore. I'll go ahead and run a query and we can see just, default what's coming up and how many messages we have currently. Ooh, I have a lot. I have 500,000 records right now. So I've generated a lot of different traffic. Same type of things we were saying. This is great, but I need to do something with this because that's a lot of logs. So let's start to take a look. And I have some saved queries that I'm going to go through just for time. So I want to look at the event bridge logs, but I want to see the message type. I want to see how many times each message type comes up. Why is that useful? Because I can see how many invocations. Am I still at an hour? Oh, I need 3 hours. Let me do it again. I need 3 hours because I generated some actual throttles and I want to look at it then. So let's do that again. So what I have is I'm looking at all of those different types and I can see, hey, we have lots of good invocation success. We have some throttle events and some retriable failures. Let's take a look at those specific invocation attempts, right? We want to see what was failing and where. So if I come back in here, I saved one for invocation attempt throttle. That's what the message type looks like. And so when I run this, I'm only looking at the messages that match the invocation attempt throttle. It's going to pull back these messages. I can start to look at this. There's a lot of information. I know it's kind of tiny. There's a lot of information in here. It's very text heavy, but you can see, hey, this is the first attempt that it was throttling. I can see what the rule ARN is, the target ARN. That's great, but it takes too long for me to kind of go through everything. I want to see a bit more detail. Let's look at some detailed throttle information. This time I'm adding some of those fields I want to see into the query at the top. I'm going to zoom out a little bit so we can see it. And what it'll return with in just a second is I can now see, hey, this is an event where it was the first time throttling. I couldn't complete the put log events for this event bus logging test. This is the rule. It's my default event bus Lambda logger rule. The target is it's going to this event bus logging test destination. And I kind of have some better details on like what rule was causing it, but I kind of want a little bit better. That's not the right one. This is the right one. Throttled rules and targets. So what I did here is I'm actually looking at those invocation attempts, and I want to get the unique rules and the unique targets to see is it one specific rule was having the calls across those thousands of events. And sure enough, every single one of those throttling events was related to this specific rule that we were running and this specific destination. So if you had multiple destinations, let's say because EventBridge can handle up to 5 destinations for a target, right? You could see the one that's actually the problematic one and be able to see how often that happened. And then you can correlate it to the exact time it happened by looking at this map.
Mm-hmm.
So you're able to use that to actually identify where the problem occurred, pretty easily once you have these queries. Once you save these queries, you could run them anytime, right? Getting the queries, like review the video and grab those queries so that you could use them. But it just makes it really easy to find what you need to action on, because otherwise it could be really hard and you're in like the sea of telemetry trying to figure things out. So that's where that's really handy. Does EventBridge log by default, or do I need to enable that? So for your event bus, these logs that we're capturing are a part of what is this new log setting. So like example here, if I come in here,
it's on the bus level, right?
It is on the bus level, and I'm just going to do test. We'll just do CloudWatch. I'm going to just error. That's fine. Include execution data test. So I'm going to just create this. I think I went too fast. I was actually going to set it up, but I haven't done it that way. Yeah, I did it anyways. So you define it as a part of, if your event bus had it as a part of creation, or if it's not enabled, when you come in here, you can create the logging, you can edit it, and you can set the error or the execution and the location. But by default, for newer ones, it has you set that. But if you have older ones before this feature was launched, that's not enabled. One thing I will say is if you do info like I was doing, you're going to capture a lot of logs. It'll probably get expensive stored, like ingesting all that. Because if you saw in 3 hours, I had like 500,000 events, and I was trying to get a lot of events. I'm going to clean it up after this. But just be careful with what you're ingesting and make sure it's impactful and there's value in that. Okay. The other thing, and I know we got a lot, but let's go to Lambda, and I have a couple of functions to look at here. I have some log generation functions. As I'm bringing that up, I guess Siva, I'm gonna hand it over to you. Can you talk a little bit about like what are the benefits of storing in CloudWatch or S3 or why would you Firehose to like send your logs via Firehose? Why would you do that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Joe. Yeah, this is a classic question that's been asked by many of our customers. So some of them do like CloudWatch, and some people say like, hey, maybe we have some compliance reasons. We just want to store it in S3. And some people are like, so analytical nature. So they just wanted to into maybe ADF or data firehose, and then maybe send it to their destination of their choice because they want to do some analytical operation on top of it. So from our side, from AWS, we wanted to give you the tools handy for you so that you are not tied to one particular thing, maybe in this case, CloudWatch, right? So depending on that scenario, like, you might want to send it to multiple destinations. And then from there, we want to give you the freedom of choice so that you can pick your poison from there, right? So that's our like intention of doing that. And that's what Joe is going to be talking about.
Yeah. And so it really kind of comes down to customer choice. Customers wanted other destinations besides CloudWatch. And so now you have the availability to do that, right? You can send it to CloudWatch logs by default, to S3, to Amazon Data Firehose, right? And ADF has a ton of partner endpoints that you can send to, or just an HTTP API if you need to send it someplace specific that isn't related to those. But what's kind of really nice, and I'm going to share this blog about when it launched, right? So this link to Lambda introduced tiered pricing. It's not just about the log destinations, but at scale, your logs get cheaper, right? So if you look in this, we have specifically for Lambda, if you're storing in CloudWatch, it used to just be the 50 cents per gigabyte, right? And now it's moved, if you're up to the 50 terabytes per month, that's a lot of logs. But it goes down to the 5 cents, right? I mean, it's super nice if you're that big. But yeah, that's nice that it does that now. Infrequent access, which infrequent log class with CloudWatch is half the price. If you notice, it starts at 50 cents a gig. It's half the price, but it doesn't have a bunch of the enhanced features. You can do some of the log insights queries and look at the logs, but you can't do a lot of stuff around like data protection, the free indexing, the free ETL stuff we have for transformation are in there for like anomaly detection, pattern analysis, things like that isn't available.
So you, as always, you kind of have to know what you aim to do with them when picking
yes.
which gear to use.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And similarly, what we have here is this is specific for the S3 and Data Firehose. These start at the same rate as the infrequent access. And so these are delivery charges. Keep that in mind. This is delivery. So you're delivering the logs to the destination. The destination still has its own fees, right? It's just an easier way to set that up in the console so you can ship it there. But this is how that works specifically, right? So customers have the option to do that and to easily configure that for their Lambda functions. Okay. All right. Well, let's move on to step functions. Step functions has had a couple of cool new things. So one of the things that I'm going to jump to, I'm going to grab this dashboard I created, is as this loads, let's talk about it. There was, where is it? Yes. So there was a launch backup to additional metrics for distributed map runs. I think that's really handy, right? So you can see the approximate open map runs, which you can only have a limit of that. That's related to a service quota. You can see your open map run limit, and if it hits and exceeds that. And then also the approximate map run backlog size, right? So if you're not able to run because you've hit your quota and you can't do more map runs, you're throttled until there's more available. There's this other link that goes into the details. This is specific to the metrics in CloudWatch from the step functions documentation, where it goes in detail like what these are for, how it's broken down, some additional links so that you can kind of read about how they work. But what you can end up doing is creating alarms based on those metrics, or if you wanted to, you can have a dashboard and a list what the metrics are. I didn't have any that were actually being throttled, so I wasn't generating that last metric. But we can see like what my open map run limit is. That's just the level that it's at. When I'm running, how many I have in here, obviously not enough. But I'm not approaching this threshold, and you just have some better visibility and way to alarm on that if you are, which is really nice. We didn't have that previously. So if a map run was getting throttled, it was a bit harder to track down. And now you can see that much more simply, which is great. All right. Moving on from that, but still within step functions though. What step functions released recently, and let's go to step functions, was, let's get in here, was APIs for service quota management. Now, service quotas aren't necessarily observability, but if you're not observing your service quotas and you get throttled, you sure wish you had it. So it's important to know what your quotas are where you can. And so what we have is I have this state machine, okay, that I'm opening up now, where I've kind of put something together. It's more of an example. It's not really something that we put into place here to use. But if I look at this, what it's going to show, and let me collapse this. We'll close it, and I'm gonna zoom this guy. So center, and let's see if we'll kind of go through it. What I have is you have two different ways you can get your service quotas. You can either do the regular like get service quota with the specific service quota ID you want to look at, right? And you can choose to be like, okay, I want this specific service quota. That's a service quota code, right? And you can see as you hover over that field, it shows you this is what the pattern has to be. And then there's the service code for the service itself, right? And this is going to get that specific service quota. Additionally, if you wanted to, you could list the service quotas so that you have multiple service quotas that you could then parse through, maybe do some parallel executions against it, validating those if you wanted to. Where I'm just looking at all of my Lambda service quotas, right? And you could take various actions on that. So with the service quota, because I'm getting a service quota that has thresholds that are defined by the service team, and we'll look at that in a second. I can get the metric for that service quota to be able to define, hey, am I over a certain limit? And then if it is greater than the 8,000 that I have, because I'm approaching that 10,000, if I know I hit that target and I'm approaching 10,000 concurrent executions, I need to scale. And so if I did need to scale and it's greater than that, so if I look at this choice, I have a greater than, whoops, I didn't update this, but it's greater than 8,000 is what it should be. It would process me over this way. I did this for some testing stuff. But I'm going to go ahead and just execute it so we can take a quick look. I won't be exceeding this, so it won't. I don't need to put anything in here for the moment. But let's go ahead and kick this off, and we're going to run. And then we should see it go green through. So it went green through. And so I can actually take a look here. I can see my max concurrent executions is 128. It's less than this. I don't need to request a service quota increase. Now, this is cool. This is great. You can manage service quotas. We used to have a solution service monitor, right? Service quota monitor that you could implement. But why is this even extra useful for now? Well, service quotas recently announced, I'm going to call it automated management. Okay, so it's phase 1 of the launch. And see, it's coming up.
That was quite the cliffhanger.
I know, right? What it's going to show is right now we have notify only. So what this does is this sends events through AWS Health for your service quotas, right? And the ones that have thresholds defined. So now you can leverage EventBridge off of service quota notifications that you'll receive to execute a step function state machine in that way. Right. And you can pass the actual service code that you need to and have that as a part of, pulling that from the state of the event that was sent to step functions and be able to make those requests as needed. You'd obviously need to have some logic in there, but coming soon, notify and auto adjust. That's what everyone's waiting for. So if you have critical service quotas, you may need to increase, you want to be able to adjust those, you'll be able to define that coming soon. That's the phase 2. But what are actually available, right? That's what's important. The key thing here is these are only service quotas that have thresholds defined. Not all of them do. Not all of them are tracked and presented to you in the console. So if you want to know if you can do it, if I do Lambda, I can see only concurrent execution support that. Okay, if I want to do API gateway, right? Nothing's supported for API gateway. This is a way you can see if you can do that. How else could you potentially see it? And if I go to AWS services and I go API gateway, what you'll notice, there's no utilization metrics. So there's around 10,000 service quotas. There's almost 2,000 that send utilization metrics, right? Those are ones that you can actually monitor and adjust using a workflow, because otherwise you would have to monitor them yourself, your own utilization, and you would have to notify, step functions, send an event to manage it if you had some sort of automated process. But you now have the availability to manage it within there. And I can't wait for the auto increases for your critical services to come through the automated management. But with that, that's a lot. I'm going to take a breath, if you won't mind. And I'm going to pass it back over to you.
Yes, well, that was a lot. Well, that's super cool. Lots of great improvements around observability for all of us, and especially for serverless. We had a question on one of, let's see, here we go, from I Can't Lose to You again. And this time, is there a difference if I were to choose logging to S3 directly versus logging to S3 via Firehose?
Yeah, so if you're logging to S3 directly, if I'm remembering correctly, let's just double check it real quick. I think it's better if I double check.
Ingesting pricing was the same.
It is. So for S3, what you need is the delivery log group, right? So you have to have the role for the log group that's going to manage it has to have permissions to send to S3. Okay, so what's going to be different is when you're creating your IAM policy that's going to have permissions to send to S3, the trust policy has to include logs.amazonaws.com. And actually, since we're here, let's just take a spin in there, because I think this is one of the most confusing things when I initially used it, was understanding how I had to define that role that's going to be used for it. So I'm going to jump over to here briefly, and we'll take a look. Don't mind my probably overly permissive permissions just for demo purposes, but take a look at the trust relationship. So you didn't see it. You didn't see it. Okay. But you have to allow logs, which is CloudWatch logs, to have the permissions to send to, oh God, you don't see it. Okay. To send to S3.
We didn't see that one.
And so, yeah, I mean, that's kind of the one catch. If you think about it from the Kinesis side, you have to set up data firehose, right? That has to have permissions. And now you're going to have to be able to send logs in the same way with the trust policy to Kinesis. And then Kinesis is going to have a role that it could send from Kinesis to S3, right? You're managing an additional layer is a way of thinking of it. You're still getting it to the same destination, but you're adding an additional layer on top of that, and the cost associated with that for introducing Kinesis in that way.
And also the latency, right? It's going to be.
Of course.
Yeah. All right, folks, with that, it's time to wrap up. Covered a whole lot of observability stuff in 57 minutes. Super cool. I'm going to ask two things of both of you, Joe and Siva. Number one, which is your favorite of these releases? Very briefly. And then secondly, give us a session at re:Invent that you're looking forward to.
Yeah, Siva, you go first.
Yeah, sure. So since I am mostly focused on application signals, we have been delivering on a daily basis or weekly basis newer features. So I'm excited about application signals the way we came in the just last 1 year. So that's the first question answer. And then my second one is going to be please come down for COP 335, which is I'm going to do a breakout session about GenAI workloads, how you can do it with traditional mix. I'm going to be talking about all the way from traditional workloads to the GenAI workloads, how you can monitor it. So please come in.
Yeah, awesome. I'll go next. So honestly, I love application signals. I love I love a lot of things. Okay. I love a lot of things, but I love application signals because once you've kind of used it, getting those insights at a glance when you go into your service, that's really easy to auto instrument, no matter what compute platform you're using on AWS, right? Getting some bird's eye view, something's wrong. Let me click on it. Oh, that might be it, right? Being able to see that is great. Also, I really love that not just EventBridge and not just Lambda, but multiple services are giving our customers choice to say, I don't want to send to just CloudWatch. If I want it to go to S3, it can go there, or it can go to whatever other destination with KDF or ADF. I'm sorry. I really like that. Go ahead. Sorry.
One session, briefly, Joe.
Oh, sorry. CNS 369, Serverless Observability Best Practices for AWS Distributed Systems.
Cool. Very cool. Well, thank you both, Siva and Joe, for joining us and sharing all of this knowledge. Thanks to everyone watching for being here week after week for the serverless spooky office hours. My name is Gunnar. Super excited to be here with you again. Thank you all very much. Bye-bye.